Get ready for Season 3 of the Tron Grand Hackathon 2022 with a total of $1.2 million in prizes across Web3, DeFi, GameFi, NFTs, and the newly added Academy and Ecosystem tracks. The wait is over. Tron Grand Hackathon presented by TronDAO. To learn more, visit trondao.org. Eager to make more informed decisions around crypto using data you can trust? Chainalysis demystifies cryptocurrency by providing industry-leading compliance, market intelligence, and investigation support for all crypto assets for organizations like Gemini, Crypto.com, and BlockFi. Maximize your potential with the leading blockchain data platform by visiting chainalysis.com/thescoop now. This episode is brought to you by IWC. IWC Schaffhausen is a Swiss luxury watch manufacturer based in Schaffhausen, Switzerland. Known for its unique engineering approach to watchmaking, IWC combines the best of human craftsmanship and creativity with cutting-edge technology and processes. Discover the full collection at IWC.com or download the IWC app to experience a virtual try-on now. All opinions expressed by hosts and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and not necessarily those of the blocks. Podcast guests may have taken positions in the assets or other matters discussed in this podcast. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. For full terms, visit theblockcrypto.com/terms-service. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Scoop. I'm your host, Frank Chaparro, editor-at-large at The Block, and today we have a very exciting episode for you. On the other side of the mic joining us is my guest, Matt Gould, founder and CEO at Unstoppable Domains. How are you?
Doing great, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's definitely my pleasure, again, to chat with you and get into what is going on over at Unstoppable Domains. Maybe for folks who are unfamiliar, you can give us the quick elevator pitch. It's kind of the window into your soul, so to speak. Or I guess you could say like wallets are kind of the window into your soul, and this is like the sort of trappings around a wallet. It's like the identifier.
I think that's right on point. At Unstoppable Domains, we make NFT domains, and we really like to think about these as user-owned identities, so self-sovereign identities. And we want to get these to absolutely every single person on the planet. And you alluded to the first use case, which is anyone who's had a cryptocurrency wallet and you want to send crypto to somebody, you know that trying to copy paste those really large hex addresses is painful. And what you can do is use a domain name like brad.nft or matt.crypto, and you can instead send crypto to that name. It doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin or Litecoin or Ethereum or anything like that. And that's really the first use case for NFT domains. But if you think about it, like you're kind of pointing out, is that NFT domains abstract out who you are on the blockchain, right? So instead of being that long blockchain address somewhere, you can actually be your name. And then that name can be the same if you're on Bitcoin or on Ethereum or wherever you are, so that people can find information about you. And we're starting to see this happen with people using these NFT domains as a part of their identity, even switching it into their handles on Twitter and start add more information about themselves back to those NFT domains. And we think this is a big deal because there really isn't an identity system for the internet yet. And a lot of people in the space think this is probably one of the big unlocks for crypto and blockchain over the next several years.
It seems like such a scary thing to try to explain to people, but I feel like there's so many parallels in the analog world or in the social media world. You had your sort of MySpace handle back in the day, and it would show you who your top friends are, the music you like, the sort of groups you're interested in. And you can kind of think of like what the future of a wallet will be. It's effectively the same thing. You'll go to, frank.eth and you'll see everything. You'll see the NFTs I own, maybe the groups I'm a part of. Maybe if we are in a world where music is residing on the blockchain, you can see the stems that I might have in NFT form. And is that how you would maybe draw the comparison? And maybe we can walk into a conversation about how the blockchain version of that is superior to the non-blockchain version that we've had kind of exists in some iteration or some form.
Yeah, I think you hit on something really interesting, which is all these social handles. And like I have my Twitter handle, and
Mm-hmm.
my dog has his Instagram handle, right? And people have your Reddit name or your TikTok ID, and all of these are your identity on that platform, and that identity is actually owned and controlled by that platform. So if you build up reputation as your name, at your name on Twitter or something, you can't portably take any of that history
Yeah.
or any of that value that you've created yourself when a new platform comes out, like TikTok. And this is great for apps because they like to get that user lock in, and they're really trying to like
Yeah.
build that walled garden. And so from their perspective, it's nice if they have their own walled garden naming system. And it's interesting because if you look at crypto wallets also, some of them have these walled garden naming systems inside of their applications. But when we've been talking about why they should be using a Web3 naming system instead, the light bulb goes on for crypto people because they realize that if you can let the user portably take around their data with them between applications, that you're going to create a better system. You won't get that walled garden locked in for those companies, but the individuals will be able to retain the value that they create for themselves on one platform to another. And that's kind of like the ethos of what we're trying to do here in Web3. And that's one of the big differentiators between a traditional naming system inside of an application like Twitter and then a Web3 naming system. So if we could fast forward to a future and you're on Twitter, and then instead of being, your at Twitter handle, you are instead your at NFT domain, like matt.nft or something, then when you want to take that reputation with you to another application, you can bring it with you. And we actually see a future where you're able to not only bring, your name with you, but you can bring your followers and your contacts, potentially even your posts.
Yeah. How does that work? How do you sort of make that interoperable with the existing world?
Yeah. So there's lots of projects that are working on this in the back end. I think it's worth calling some of those people out. And what you have to do is you have to attach data back to your name. And this is just like traditional DNS, right? So if you go back in time, everyone used to have a server and then people would look it up by going to an IP address. But they simplified that by making domain names like .com or whatever. But what that domain name is doing is actually just acting as an alias and pointing to the website. And we think that that's the same kind of pattern is going to play out with NFT domains and with these Web3 identities, is that the identity is going to be a place that allows all these applications to look up that additional data about you when you're on those applications. So when you sign into the future, instead of creating a different password for every single application, or instead of using one of these SSO protocols like Google Auth or Facebook or Twitter Auth or something like this, you're actually going to use your wallet paired with your NFT
Yeah.
domain. And then when you sign into those places are going to be able to look at your NFT domain, and then they're going to be able to see where all of your other information is stored that they could then ask you to bring with you to that application. So that's how we think it's going to work, is users are going to use their wallets. They're going to be signing into applications just like they do in Web3, but they're going to do that in Web2 as well. And when they sign in, they can permission those applications to go and do those lookups about all that additional information they want to bring with them. And that's where a lot of the gray area is in the identity space right now, is figuring out how those lookups work and how you can carry that information with you. And you're just starting to see like some first tries on this. We just recently did badges, for instance, which is a way for you to, like, for apps to save little pieces of data about you, like saying, hey, this
Yeah.
is the last time you used the app. And then when you log in
Yeah.
again, they can bring it with you. But there's a lot more to be done there.
Yeah. We kind of hit on that when we last spoke, when we met. That's super fascinating. I want to get into that because I think it's something it's relatable for anyone who has a Apple Watch or an iPhone, and you get those 7-day streaks. Even on Snapchat, which the young kids are using to send images to each other, you have streaks where it's like represented as the fire emoji, but maybe that could be an NFT and that's in your wallet, and you can see who you have your streaks with, or how many days in a row you've kind of kept up with your exercises. Like you mentioned that you see these consumer use cases kind of being at the forefront. Maybe these larger technology companies, social media companies, won't adopt some of this stuff until much later. So how do you sort of prioritize where you're doing business?
Mm. We try to make sure we're spending the time on the areas that we think will help develop the underlying platform. So what we try to do is we try to look for use cases that have applications across as many apps as possible as a way to do the prioritization at this point. We still think we're at the infrastructure stage for Web3 and specifically Web3 identity. So you want to put your most effort on the things that you think touch the most applications. And so we're always trying to generalize. So when we're talking about apps that want to do loyalty programs or whatever, we talk about them as loyalty programs for all applications, not just for that app in particular. And then we're also opportunistic. I was actually very surprised that Twitter was so fast to adopt NFT profile picture.
Yeah, we talked about that. I was
Yeah.
also very surprised.
Yeah, so like even though some enterprises may be moving slow, there looks like there's a couple others that may move fast. So if we have great conversations with some larger companies and we have a great enterprise team, then we try to move fast with those people as well. And blockchain.com is an example of somebody who was very early, and we just launched the blockchain extension with them. And we just want to find people for the larger enterprises, people who are mission aligned with us, and we want to get an NFT domain to every single person on the planet. And blockchain.com said we want to get one to every single one of our users. And so we prioritize that person because that was really quick. And when we talk about it internally, the things that I point out to is the only way the whole world's going to adopt Web3 technology is if we build scalable tech, right? That's all about the platform. But then we also have to make sure that we're working with partners in the ecosystem, because you're not going to bring all 3 or 4 billion cell phone users on the planet into Web3 by yourself. I mean, you could try, but I certainly don't think you'll get there in any reasonable time frame. And so that's at a high level how we make the priorities here on Unstoppable Domains is, if we have something that we think can be applied to just a whole bunch of people and really will impact our platform, we'll push there, like loyalty and rewards. We think that's an area. There's a couple others that are interesting. And then on the other side, if there are these larger enterprises that are that have proven to be innovative, and then they're mission aligned with what we're trying to do here, then we also work to try to push those forward as quickly as possible.
I don't know if you know this, but we just put out a big company intelligence report on
I did not know.
unstoppable domains. That's a shout out to our research team. Wendy kind of does a deep dive into the business. If you take a look at the quick takes here, we just closed a $65 million round that minted the most recent unicorn. We've been seeing unicorns get unminted in crypto, but I guess that was in July. You guys closed that round. So what do you do with $65 million in the space? We kind of talked about your priorities. Now, how do you take the money and have it fit those priorities, or match rather?
Yeah, well, I would say, given the most recent market conditions, you definitely want to do it very carefully, and you want to prioritize the longer term investments right now over some of the shorter term things. And so you've seen that shift at our company, and then I think you'll also see that at a lot of others. Now is the time to be investing in your engineering org, your product org, building out the APIs, the libraries, the other pieces of infrastructure that you're going to need to have in 24 to 36 months when the market comes back. It's also a fantastic time to clean up any organizational technical debt you may have accumulated. But yeah, I think you have to be careful in the current market conditions about how you do that. For us, I would say the bulk of the money is going to be spent on product and engineering over the next, let's call it 2 years. And there's going to be less emphasis on consumer marketing, for instance, in these market conditions. I think that just makes sense for where we are. And the way that we check in for us is we actually track daily product usage and daily number of integrations. So we have just a lot of metrics that we're tracking on people using naming systems, and we're trying to get more of that information as well so that we can know that we're heading in the right direction. That is a little bit challenging in crypto, right? Because most of the stuff is either on chain, so you have to have people who can do that type of analytics. And then a lot of the stuff that happens outside of your purview. So like we don't know when someone sends a crypto payment to somebody else using an NFT domain, for instance, inside of a wallet. That's one of the primary use cases for NFT domains. So we have to do a lot of looking at what's happening on chain to try to determine if what we're doing on the product side is creating changes for users. So I think that's a little bit different for Web3 companies, but that's where we're going to be spending a lot of investment over the next 2-3 years.
So trying to figure out if like you're actually finding product market fit by looking at the on-chain data. We're trying to make sense of the on-chain data.
Right. And we're not the only company that's in there working on this right now. There's a lot of great companies who are doing blockchain analytics, and we actually rely on those. So this is not something that we spend a lot of time on, but we spend a lot of time on, building our products for ourselves, and we need to make sure that those are actually getting in use with users. And last year, I think everyone agrees there was a significant amount of speculation in the crypto space, specifically for NFTs, and we need to move to utility. And I think that we were fortunate in that NFT domains have always been about utility, because the very first thing you did with them was set them up for sending crypto payments, which is different than
Yes, but isn't it weird how there is a bit of speculation in that market? It's almost like land during, California land during the gold rush, and it's intangible to an extent, which makes it even stranger, right? People are buying, the Frank domain, probably is worth tons and tons.
Yeah, I will be the first to raise my hand and say, like, I did not think that the speculation would be at the level that it got to last year, because we've been here since 2018, and so we've had when we were originally doing this, it was just a lot of hardcore crypto people, and so to push back against, in order to make sure that utility really is getting out there, you have to actively design that into your product, and that's one of the reasons why we're working really closely with a lot of these wallets to make sure that we can get domain distribution at scale. Free domains is a really good example of that. And we think that if you continue to have that focus on utility for users, at least in the domain NFT space, that's going to be the thing that actually drives long-term value. So what I'm trying to say is, if you just focus on speculation, and I know there's a lot of hype around domains, especially this past summer, and then also end of last year, that's just going to be a short-term thing. So some of that, it does help with industry exposure. I think that's super important. Speculation definitely drives markets, and it's about getting the right balance.
Get ready for Season 3 of the Tron Grand Hackathon 2022. There are a total of $1.2 million in prizes up for grabs in Web3, DeFi, GameFi, NFTs, and the newly added Academy and Ecosystem tracks. So what are you waiting for? Join Tron for an opportunity to showcase your work, win funding for your project, and network with other builders in the community. Tron Grand Hackathon, presented by TronDAO. To learn more, visit trondao.org. Are you eager to make more informed decisions around crypto using data you can trust? Chainalysis is here to help. Chainalysis demystifies cryptocurrency by providing industry-leading compliance, market intelligence, and investigation support for all crypto assets for organizations like Gemini, Crypto.com, and BlockFi. Gain unparalleled visibility and maximize your potential with the leading blockchain data platform by visiting chainalysis.com/thescoop now. This episode is brought to you by IWC. IWC Schaffhausen is known for continually innovating within the world of Swiss watchmaking. A pioneer in the use of titanium and ceramics, IWC today specializes in highly engineered watch cases manufactured from advanced materials such as colored ceramics, ceratanium, and titanium aluminide. This year's collection includes colored ceramic pieces in Lake Tahoe white and woodland green. Discover the new collection at IWC.com or download the IWC app to experience a virtual try-on now. I remember having folks, in my DMs trying to sell me the various Frank-related domains. Mustache.eth.
Mustache.eth. Wow. Yeah, I think that's probably a good one. And the thing is like, these things do have value. So those people are not wrong in like going about it that way. And if you think about it, some of these regular .com domain names, those are mostly for businesses. So it's like 20 to 50 million businesses that have registered about 350, .com like domains on the DNS system. And the difference is NFT domains are more for users. So there's like 3 to 4 billion users. So it's a much larger pool of people. But then if you think about like what type of domain names or what type of NFT domains are going to be popular for personal identity as opposed to like businesses. I think there is a little bit of shifting there, and you are seeing things like people's names like Frank or something that's branded to you like your mustache or something like that as achieving really high premiums, whereas on the regular domain name it'll be like things like travel or hotel.com or something like that seems to get the highest market prices. So it's a brand new space. There's a lot for people to figure out, and I think because it's crypto, you're gonna have those people speculating on what they think the future is going to be. That's just natural to this market, and God love them. I mean, I think it's good for them to be out there and testing out the waters. But as a company working on the domain name system, we're going to stay focused on how we can drive long-term value by building more features and functionality for domains. So we're going to do our job, and we'll let the speculators play around in the market and have fun. It is fun to watch, though.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to think about where the value derives for some of these things. I did one of the more fun articles I wrote last year was on how metaverse land is valued. And we don't think as long and hard about this, but there are people out there who think really long and hard about, what some parcel in a given metaverse is worth. And similarly, what makes a good domain, or what makes for like where the value is in these domains. And this isn't new, right? People used to sit on Web 2 domains for ages. So I think it was Mark Cuban who made quite a bit of money doing that, if I'm recalling his history correctly.
Yeah, and the parallels are just interesting. Like, land, right? And there's speculators on land all the time, and now we have metaverse land, and people are speculating on that. It is super interesting to try to figure out how people put values on those things. And then if you look at people trying to figure out what the primitives are going to be, what's more important? Is it going to be the land, or is it going to be your consistent identity across those metaverses that's going to be more important? Or maybe it's going to be something completely else. Like we saw a lot of experiments with NFTs last year, and I thought one of the most interesting was loot, right? And they actually said it's not the picture on the NFT that matters. It's like, the set of attributes that go with that NFT, and then you can carry those around different NFT projects. So there's a lot of innovation still to be had in virtual spaces. But I do think that names are going to be around. And the reason why I think that is they're really good for simplifying lookups to find other people that you're looking for. And right now, that's simply just trying to find their cryptocurrency address. But like I was alluding to, maybe you want to find more information about that person, verify their KYC credentials, or maybe see if they're part of a club that you're in, or maybe you want to see where they are right now in the metaverse. So I think names have a good chance of being a very important piece of our digital infrastructure in the future. And
they've always been important to our lives. I mean, we were kind of joking about this before we turned on the mics. It says a lot about you, or at least it used to, right? When you were the son of a goldsmith, you'd be Goldson or something, et cetera, et cetera. Or we were talking about if your father was a priest, you'd be priest's son or something like that.
Yeah. And I think that having consistent names is only going to get more important because they help you address a couple of problems that we have on the internet. And one of those is you don't have the ability to take your stuff around with you and be consistent. And we kind of talked about that. We talked about that earlier.
But that's pretty powerful, right? Because think about, the most glaring benefit of that to me is you can go onto a new social platform, and automatically, if there are followers on platform B that you have on platform A, it can port almost. And then they are automatically, you have the same audience to the extent that audience lives on that other platform.
Yes.
And that's just huge.
Yeah. And it creates so much more competition on these social apps. And like you look at people trying to launch new social apps, and it's a lot of work because it's really hard to build a network effect. But if you allow users to have their own network effect and essentially like bring that network effect with them as they move between applications, then those platforms lose a lot of their lock-in power. And I think it makes them have to do a better job at being a platform for social connection. And I don't think that our platforms right now are built to be great places to meet other people or to have great thoughts. They've been built as great places to shove ads down people's throats. And I think a lot of that problem, because I believe in markets, is because they haven't had to compete to be better at being social platforms. And we already have this technology on your cell phone, right? When you download an app, you can import your contacts on that messaging app, like when I download Signal. So we already have, we've seen this work before, and it's super helpful in other places. So I think it's that kind of opening up, and that's what people talk about. When people talk about Web3, they talk about ownership and you being able to own your data and take it around. But when that happens, you actually create new business models. And when you give users more empowerment over their data, I actually think you end up creating a system where all the applications they interact with have to do better. And we definitely need that. So, and then the second piece that I think is huge is reputation. And, that just naturally follows. So if you are the same person across all the apps, now you can build up reputation. And I think the internet right now just has tons of bots, right? They've got tons of fake accounts. There's a lot of scammers. There's a lot of fraud online. And we need more spaces for people to interact where they can bring their reputation with them, right? And people talk about like, oh, I want to be anonymous online and I want to have my, extreme anonymous privacy. And I would say you already have a lot of those forums. And the thing that we're actually missing online are more spaces where people have their reputation with them. And specifically simple things like buying and selling stuff, right? So like on eBay, if someone scams you on eBay, that scammer can just create a new account and then scam someone else on eBay, or they can just create a new account and scam someone on Amazon, marketplace or something. And if we had consistent reputation on the internet, we'd make it extremely expensive for people to spin up fake reputations. Like right now, spinning up a bot on Twitter is probably less than $1, 10 cents or something to get bot accounts or something. So I think that reputation that it comes from having persistent digital identities is another huge benefit. Not only owning your data, but being able to create your reputation will make online interactions hopefully more pleasant.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And again, like the ceiling there is kind of, that can not just cross, various internet or, Web 2 platforms, Web 3, but also just things in your everyday life, right? I mean, who knows what we could see in the vein of like a social credit score to an extent, or maybe maybe even we get the credit reporting agencies to kind of get involved in this. I mean, there's a lot of crazy things that seem outside the scope of possibility today that could happen.
You have a lot of data out there that's
tons
that's not aggregated, that you don't have the ability to look at and say if it's right or wrong. Like you have a credit score out there,
or it's not working for you, right? Like it's not being put to work to an extent. Like our credit scores incorporate 7 things or something close to 7, maybe it's 8, maybe it's 6. Whether you are making payments on time, the number of accounts you have open, the amount of credit you have extended that you haven't used, your age. But there could be potentially like, dozens more that glean from the various data that sits out there about you that is relevant. This is stupid, but you get a Venmo request, how quickly you pay it back. That data is there. It's just not being used.
Yeah. And I think that people underestimate how many places that they interact with where it'd be nice to have their ID with their identity travel with them. Everything from like calling my Uber driver, and I could see his name is like uberdriver.nft or whatever. And I could see, information about him that may make me feel more comfortable as a passenger, to dating apps that might be a little dystopian, but I'm sure that there's a future there for people to bring their reputation with them on those. And then to maybe more simple things like rewards programs.
I think some people wouldn't want that incorporated into the dating apps.
Yeah, I think that's one that I won't touch on because that's an innovative and also just absolutely crazy area.
Thing.
Yeah, exactly. But for things like DeFi lending, right? Like that, I think would be something that people would be, they can understand.
Check on the blockchain if he's constantly asking if if the gentleman's asking to go Dutch all the time. And then red flag, digital red flags.
Digital red flags. I think there's going to be more of those. And then there's also going to be green flags, which is something that I think that we don't have enough of online right now. And, something as simple as when someone reaches out to me on Twitter, I have to do like 15 minutes of Googling to try to see, who is this person? And if we could make those things a lot easier, I think we would have a lot more connections. So a lot of the things that we're missing in our day-to-day interactions, I think, are because we don't have a form of digital reputation. And I'm actually excited about what kind of marketplaces and businesses and lending protocols and all sorts of new things that could be created by having some sort of persistent reputation. Like you're saying, there's a lot of things that aren't being tracked. Like your life right now is determined by like 12 numbers or something for your credit score. And what if you're, a really amazing employee and you have a lot of industry experience in carpentry or something like that, and there's not really a way for you to take that credential around with you to a bunch of different places right now that's super convenient, especially between countries. We just had a lot of people migrate in Europe because of the Ukraine war, and there's a lot of those people who have lost a lot of their work history or maybe their credentials for doing this or that, and it's not portable with them as they move around, and they've lost it. Everything from their their work credentials to their healthcare records. We need to make it much more easy for people to take their digital information with them online, between metaverse spaces, between Decentraland and Facebook's metaverse or whatever, but also in the physical world when you move maybe from one place to another.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting though. I don't know if you ever watched SpongeBob, but there's that one episode where I think he loses his ID and then he has this identity crisis where he doesn't know where he is or who he is. But if you lose your ID or my COVID passport thing, life becomes tricky. But you can go to the DMV and they'll give you a new one if you lose your registration, called the DMV, etc. But there's this new technical risk to a digital identity that if you lose your keys, do you then lose your identity? Do you cease becoming who you are? Like SpongeBob.
Yeah. So I'm optimistic about this. I still think we're really early, right? We've only registered 2.5 million domains, and like the number of apps is still in the hundreds, not quite thousands for this. So we got to remember, like, we're at the very beginning of this process for NFT identity. And I think that you're going to have custody solutions, backup, recovery. We just on the mobile app made it so you could back up your domain name to your iCloud account if you want to, for instance. You could even have a future where you'd be able to go and recover your digital domain by going back into the DMV. Right now, that sounds awful. So I hope we could find something better than that. But I'm just saying that all of those things that you could have for recovery for your physical ID, you could also implement something similar for that for your digital ID or your NFT domain. And this is a industry-wide problem. So like everyone's worried about losing their keys for their crypto. And I think it's already gotten better, but we could do much better as an industry over the next 5 or 10 years. But I think those solutions are coming for custody. We're working on solutions at Unstoppable Domains. We're working on multi-key recovery for your domain name, being able to assign somebody as a friend for social recovery. This has happened on other crypto assets already. Just simple backups to your iCloud, things like that. And I think there's going to be more of that to come. But yeah, you're right. It's a risk near term for people on recovering their NFT domains. It's the same as any other crypto asset at this point. But I do think long term, those are just technical problems to be solved and not limitations of the technology.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what are you most excited about going into the next few months of the year?
Well, we're very excited about Brave and our integration with them as a web browser. So they are expanding out our integration to all of our TLDs. We recently made a migration to Polygon, and that was to reduce gas fees by 100x or something like that. And so Brave is now rolling out support for all of the TLDs that we currently have now to the more than 2 million registered domains on Brave. And they have been one of the fastest growing browsers out there over the past decade, and probably definitely the most successful inside, or one of the most successful inside of crypto, along with Opera, who also is supporting our domains. And if you look at history, it's actually pretty interesting. When you see Opera support something, and Brave, I would say, is also in this category, somewhere about 5 to 7 years later, you start to see the other browsers support it. And so for us, we think that's a really big step for getting these domain names recognized as endpoints for individual digital identities. So I think that's super big. And then the other things are all around continuing to expand out our ability to offer domains through other registrars. So we're very interested in working with big players in the space to have NFT domains show up along with regular domain sales on these other websites. We're at NamesCon earlier this month, and it's important to make those industry inroads. And we're trying to tell the domain name industry that this is a huge new market for them. We actually think this market is 100x bigger than the traditional market in terms of how many customers there are that they could potentially be serving. Because again, 3 to 4 billion users versus 20 to 50 million businesses. And they have a lot of learning to do. Like, what does it mean to custody a digital asset? And so we're investing a lot of tooling into making that easier for those companies as well. So those are just two off the top of my head. And I'm excited about every single integration that we launch. So we have over 300 live integrations now. I think we're going to continue to push those out at a good pace this year. I think we should be in the tens of thousands of integrations over the next couple of years for NFT domains, and just making them, giving them more utility everywhere you interact online.
The integrator.
Yeah. Somebody's got to go out there.
Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, we got to get everybody too. It's all the Web3 apps, of course, and all the crypto people, but it's also Web 2. I mean, I think there's some interesting commentary.
What would your dream Web 2 integration be?
I think Twitter or PayPal are both two really big ones. Twitter for your social reputation, and then PayPal for your financial stuff.
All right, if you're listening, so I feel bad we didn't really get into too much of your background, but how'd you get involved in all this?
Well, I was out in San Francisco working for a startup that went through...
As one does in San Francisco.
Yeah, exactly. As one does in San Francisco. And they had gone through YC, and I was one of the first early employees there. So was very much in the tech scene. And if you were in San Francisco back in 2012, 2013, there was a Bitcoin event every week, right? So, every night almost. And so I started going to all those events, and I kind of got sucked in. And so I spent my nights and weekends working on crypto projects. And, I ran a Bitcoin node at my house. My roommate had Bitcoin miners, which were loud and hot, right? So got in super early playing around with it. And actually, I was in it for the tech. I was one of those guys. And I was interested in all the non-financial use cases for blockchain because I saw what Bitcoin was doing for money. And I just thought to myself, like, that's the solution for money. We're done. And, obviously there was a lot more innovation to happen there. But I really got interested in things for supply chains. And then I was interested in reputation actually pretty early. Naming services, Namecoin was also out there. And eventually that led into NFTs. And so we were actually playing around with NFTs before NFTs existed, ERC20 tokens on Ethereum with special characteristics or whatever, and just happened to be the right place, the right time. Really thought naming systems were a way we could bring on the next 100 million or billion users to crypto, because sending crypto was such a pain with those hex addresses. And I guess the rest is kind of history here at Unstoppable Domains. And we've been in here since even earlier than 2017, working on crypto projects, went full-time in crypto that year. And then my co-founder and I started Unstoppable Domains January 2018. And we've just been working on NFT domains since then.
Back in the throes of the bear market.
That was the best time to build, because you knew you had to build something that actually provided utility. Because like the only people buying an NFT domain back then were hardcore crypto people who were like, yeah, this does make sense. And, I want to make this easier for me to send crypto payments to each other. So you really had to talk to your customers back then. I liked it. And I think we may be in another pretty serious bear market here, but we'll see.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for joining the show. Where can our listeners learn more about you and what you're working on at Unstoppable Domains?
Yeah, please check us out. We're on Twitter at UnstoppableWeb. You can also check out our website, unstoppabledomains.com. We too have a podcast, so if you want to hear a little bit more about our history, you can go back. There's a couple hundred episodes on there. And you can also find us on Telegram, or just send us a DM on Twitter and we'll get back to you.
Awesome. Really appreciate you coming back on the show. We'll have to talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Frank.
The Scoop will be back for you again with another great guest. Have an awesome day. Looking for more great insights from The Block? Check out The Block Research, the premier platform for research content on crypto markets and the digital asset industry. The Block Research membership includes cutting-edge reports, webinars, company maps, and more, available via our dedicated research portal. Visit theblockresearch.com to find out how to join today, or contact a member of our sales team at sales@theblockcrypto.com and let them know that Frank sent you.